Welcome back, everybody, to another episode. This episode is following the same suit on the Myth of Riches season. This is season 4 in the Man of Class podcast. Not only do we still have Chad Sutton with us, but this week we actually have a special guest, a dear friend, who has gotten into a thing called infinite banking. So my buddy David Zapata is here with us to help educate us as well as educate you on a different avenue or a different way of getting into the wealth game. So David, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and give us a little bit of background of what you got going on for us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure always to talk to both of you, of course. Myself and my partners at Factum Financial work with business owners and households, primarily helping them get control of their cash flow, control of their assets, and really take a step back and, first of all, think, which I think is a crucial part that is missing in financial education and in our world today. Think about their understanding of what's happening around them so they can decide themselves what to do when they need to do it. Because at the end, ourselves are the best judges of what's best for us, and we need to be the heroes of our life. So we apply it in the context of your personal finances, your business finances. So it's a pleasure for me to dig in, talk about the topic. It's something I'm highly passionate about, and I continue to educate one person at a time. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome. And I think that dovetails perfectly into what Chad and I have been talking about in the series so far, which is think. You're so right. The financial system is set so it's sort of go do X, Y, and Z, save, put it into a 401k, retire when you're 65, you got a pension, and, die when you're 83 and a half or something. There's a ton of assumptions that goes into that. There's a ton of what if scenarios, and it's not for everybody. We live in a beautiful time right now where you don't have to wait until you're 65 to retire. People are retiring in their 30s. People are retiring in their 40s. Some people, they don't like to retire, and they find a passion in what lights them up, and they actually work that way. It just depends on the ebbs and flows on what brings them happiness for the rest of their life, right? So there's not one size fits all, which is why we've tried to do a great job of pulling together different resources, pulling different people in, have those conversations. So I think this is a really exciting podcast. So start us off, David. Life insurance policy is where infinite banking starts from. I think is a core piece of it, right? That is a policy.
Let me share an useful framework, because I think that is the part that most people go to.
Okay.
And it's an obvious part to go to because it's the product, that's the implementation part of it. I would take a step back and look at it from this perspective. In order to implement something like the infinite banking concept, you need 3 things. You need a mindset. You need to have clarity of the ideas, the problem you're trying to solve for. You need to understand, which I think the most important part is the process of banking, the process of how money moves through your life and what part of that motion do you control. And number 3, in the implementation phase, in what platform do you happen to execute this process? And it happens to be dividend paying whole life insurance policies, and we can get into the details of why we would use such a product. It offers wonderful advantages in multiple fields: liquidity control, tax advantages, generational when transfer, tax free. We can go into many details, but I would say that even before focusing on the product itself, talking about the mindset, the ideas, the problem we're trying to solve, and the process of banking, why we emulate the largest corporations and banks around the world in our personal finances, in our business finances, why that could be the solution to understanding the money game and understanding how to create freedom and control in your financial life. So that would be the starting basis. So
I got goosebumps when you were talking, David, because literally as we were going through in our previous episodes, again, we talked about, mindset. It's something that needs to be addressed because again, you can have all the tactics in the world. You can go read all the different financial books that exist on the shelves, but none of that will actually work for you until you get into the right mindset of breaking out of the things, because everything has a belief system. Everyone has a belief system. It's not until you start to break some of that open until then you can start being ready to accept the information, right? The tactics, the strategies, the other stuff. So I love that you started with that.
Yeah, I what you're saying makes me think of something I always bring up with clients. And when I share in this forum, I usually use myself because It is my experience. I'm not just preaching something I think it's great. It's how I'm living my life. And I always take them back to when they started their career, which is relevant for the three of us. We started at the same time. And I started asking questions. Okay, when you joined your company and your profession, or you started your business, when you started earning that professional income, where did your savings reside? Where did you decide to send your savings? Oh, the common answer I get, which is true for me, I started a 401k and I started making contributions through my paycheck. And I asked then, oh, really? What made you decide that that was the right asset for your savings? And then there's silence. And I don't say anything and I let them think. And the answer is, I don't really know. They're like, okay, do you remember what actions you take to engage in that decision, in that? And then either silence and they don't know. Does it make you think anything in particular? Well, I did it because most people were doing it around me. There's probably part of the paperwork. And I contrast that little experience I just described with sometimes different feelings that emerge from discussing infinite banking concept with other people, whether it's skepticism, whether it's amazement. In either direction, I immediately understand that the success, again, going back to the mindset aspect of this, is how people think. Because for the majority of us, we get introduced into a system that is, for the most part, invisible to us. And we are part of it for 30 years, however long we're in the workforce, in the hopes of having a retirement income. But we never have clarity about what problem we're trying to solve. How does it work? Does it work for my risk profile? Does it work for how I look at money, for my beliefs? None of those things are contrasted. Most of us are doing it. Nobody's making me too many questions. So I'm not going to think about it. If you two are doing it, should be good for me. It's invisible through my paycheck. So I think that these conversations always start with providing the person in front of me with the opportunity to think. I am not the judge of right or wrong or good or bad. I'm here to serve other people through my awareness, my point of view, the tools I have, my experience. I've been doing IBC. I had an insurance policy for protection back in 2011. And now that I understand the power of this product, I've developed a whole infrastructure for my family for the last 4 or 5 years. I have policies in the previous generations with my dad. I have policies on me and my wife. I'm about to become a dad in June. So I'm going to have a policy on my child. And this is going to be the mechanism to create a wealth transfer to future generations, not because of the money necessarily, because I want to change the paradigm that I, in my generation, entered life professionally, trying to escape the rat race. I want to create a system, a paradigm, an education in the next people that come after me where they never have to enter it because they understand how money works. They know what to do when they need to do it, align with their values and beliefs.
You got a mic drop on that right there, and
Yeah.
I'll say, by the way, I think we're competing for who has the sexier voice. I'm just, I thought it was.
We're casting a poll. So if anybody wants to hit us up on which one it is.
Yeah. But you heard us talk in a different podcast in an earlier show about, and this is just by design. The banking system is not set up to your benefit, right?
Mhm.
And so this has changed over time. And when we talked about fractional reserve lending and how that actually kind of opened the door for people having to stick their money in mortgages. And, guess what? The bank really loves when you put your money in a checking account and they're basically you're giving them a loan for like what, 0.1% interest, because that's what they're paying you back to hold your money. Right. And then they turn around and give you that same money back in a car loan for 5%, So what I love about where David is going here is most people, and this is just how we're taught, right? This is how America is taught. Most people look at what is the amount of income I have left over to invest and therefore generate wealth. And it's typically what's left over after I get my take home check. I spend my living expenses, maybe some went into a 401k, but whatever's left, that little bit that's left is my play money / invest money. And you have to live a life of scarcity to decide, do I want to invest that money or go out to eat with my wife? It's that kind of thing, right? So the problem herein lies is everything that's in that expense category, that we've talked about, is something that's being financed probably by the bank. You have a mortgage, you have a car, you have student loans, something like that, where, what David is talking about is a powerful thing. And this doesn't happen overnight. But once this is built, you would have the ability, to pull out of, take a loan against your policy and finance that car and offset the interest yourself. You would have the ability to finance that student loan, to finance that home, so I'm sure we're getting into that, but this is a huge topic. So please pay attention here.
Absolutely.
And I think, just to add in, you're right. We're all very similar in age, and so to give everybody, because not everybody will get the understanding of our relationship. So we all became friends around the 2011 type time frame. We probably all got sold the same insurance policy, by the way, and got bit individually all 3 times of it. And it was a very powerful lesson.
Actually,
it all caused us.
Let's do that poll real quick. Did we all buy a Northwestern Mutual policy?
Yep.
Yeah. So I've since blown mine up. I don't have it anymore. Do y'all still have it?
I blew mine up.
Convert it. Okay. Were you able to salvage yours, David? The improperly designed whole life, or?
It was not a product that was designed for what I now want to do. So I decided to switch to a different product.
So we've all since blown that up. Okay. Go ahead, Eric. Sorry, I had to know.
But all of us back in the 2011 timeframe, and I'll see how these two, what their memories are like. But back in 2011, I remember sitting around. Granted, we were all out at the bar and probably a couple shots in, but our conversations were always about saying we all had this feeling or desire and knowing that we were meant for more, that there was more than just this framework of going to work, saving in a 401k, retiring, and then moving on in life. And all 3 of us, whether it was 1-on-1 or the 3-in-1 or whatever that it was, we would always have these conversations where we challenged, right? To go back to David's, exactly how he starts talking with anybody, right? What was your mindset? How did you start to think about savings, right? What was your mindset there? All of our mindsets were, we understand what's going on, right? We went through college. We know that we're supposed to go into the workplace. We know we're supposed to go work for however many years. We know we're supposed to get married. I think at that point, none of us, I think Chad, maybe you were dating Courtney, but none of us were married. What's that?
Quasi-married.
Quasi-married. Yeah, Chad was quasi-married, but David and I, we were still trying to figure out what our lives were. But we knew that the framework that was kind of set before us was not a framework that resonated with where we wanted to go. We had goals that didn't match the framework that was set forth. So we needed a new framework. So that was 2011. Fast forward, we're in 2021, which is 10 years later. All of us have realized and said, wait a second, it all starts again from the framework. We know we need a different framework. We all started getting educated in different things. We all started getting, working on ourselves, investing in ourselves, right? This wasn't like last year, all of a sudden they came up with an idea. And then today, all of a sudden they're talking about wealth. This has been an ongoing journey where if you look at where we were back in 2011, we were still spending all of our money. We weren't really being frivolous and all this stuff. All of the things that got us to where we are today was based on rejecting the framework that was given to us and saying, we want results in our life that doesn't match that framework. Now let's get to work. Let's get the education. Let's work on the mindfulness. Let's work on the mindset. Let's work on the tactics and the strategies and where do we want to go? And what's our purpose? And all of these things really boil down into our 10-year journey. And that's only going to continue to shed, right? When we're all 10 years older and we look back on what we did in 2021, we're going to have a marker in time that says, here's how we were thinking then. Here's why maybe some of that was close, but maybe needed to tweak a little bit or articulate it a little bit better. But the bones were there in how we're going on to hit our framework.
Yeah. This is beautiful, by the way. It's makes me miss you both. It's so fun to talk to people that think like you. But just to hit again on the theme of mindset, process, and products. It's interesting because sometimes I think about this as what do you need to do? When do you do it? With what? But who do you need to become around those things? Going back to the mindset, usually hits even a higher level of importance and priority, because you could have the same products, the same things, real estate, all these tools to create wealth. If you don't think properly, if you're not who is the person capable of doing these things, it does. I mean, we know many wealthy people throughout the United States, throughout the world, that squander their wealth because they are not becoming the person. And I think that is a very important message to distribute, inviting people to engage in this journey of really enhancing the quality of their thoughts. And I'll give you this example with what you both are saying. Like the three of us have gone through high levels of education through to the degrees and profession. I was born in Colombia, as you know. I went to high school in Colombia. I went to 2 universities in Colombia. Then I came to the United States. I went to university here. We went through a master's programs together. I can tell you that by the time I started working at GE, my paradigm, and I know you both you're smarter and more responsible than me then. But I was not even thinking investing. Chad, you were saying something about you invest part of your money. Like I was not thinking like I had my expenses, my new car, my apartment, my fund money, whatever was left on my checking account was extra play money. And sometimes when I didn't look at my checking account, I was going on credit card. And that didn't matter if I made the initial salary, if I got a bonus, if my salary increased. This was several years into adulthood professionally, where I wasn't thinking money in my checking account means availability to spend more. And it took me conversations with you in particular, Eric, about what is going in my mind. What is it that I want? Is my behavior aligned with what I want in the future? To challenge that overall, my thinking was driving how my relationship with money was very negative, very unhealthy. And taking a step back from that, and I say this for the audience, whoever is listening to us, don't think that you need to know, oh, I'm investing here. Wherever you are in life, there's always an opportunity to take a step and say, things need to change and I can learn and I can become. So very insightful to hear you say that.
I love that, man. And we got to go back there because I actually remember you taught me something about investing back in the day because we had figured out our health savings account. Once we got to a certain level, you could actually deploy that into the stock market mutual fund. So give yourself some credit there. You were thinking about it back then too. Yeah. But I love what you said there. I mean, Rome was not built in a day. We've talked about this, right? All you need to do is think. Like there's a book out there called Think and Grow Rich. And the key word is not do and grow rich, it's think. When you start thinking about what you want to go after, you start taking strides towards it, you get smarter every day. Then these strategies start to make sense. You start to employ one after the other, after the other. All the things we talk about in this podcast, don't think you can go do this tomorrow, right? Pick one, learn about it, figure out what's going to make the biggest initial step in your life and focus on it. And then go to the next thing and the next thing. And then you look back 10 years from now, and like, wow, my paradigm has shifted so drastically from where it was today. That's all you got to do, guys.
Perhaps it's not the destination by the journey that matters the most. Perhaps.
That is true. That is true.
And David, you brought up a good point as well. It's invisible. And so I know last time we talked about limiting beliefs. Last time we had talked about a bunch of this different stuff that you can it starts with your belief structure. The hardest thing about your belief structure is exactly what David said. It's invisible to you. And so that if you take nothing else away from that, just imagine that for a second, because that's so profound, because there's a lesson in that for all of us. I'm taking that away because there's things that I'm doing in my life right now that is invisible to me. And we are so apparent, and we put so much emphasis on that which we see. I see something in the news, I'm going to react. I see, right? We rely on all of these senses that we have, our 5 senses. And that's how we take the data-driven decisions in our lives. How hard is it to be able to make a change when there is no data, or the data is invisible to you, right? That's why that's why mindset is like the most powerful tool. It's like Thor's hammer. It's like the most powerful tool, yet the hardest to work on because it's invisible. But know that exactly what what Chad said, it's not going to be an overnight. You're not going to be like, okay, today I'm going to work on mindset. I'm going to journal for 24 hours and then it's going to be licked. We are all still working through mindset. We are all still working on what's the next level. Who do we need to become in order to get what it is that we want to have in life? And it's through that journey, again, tying to what David had said, that is that growth piece. And once you tie that in, the money comes.
That's right.
Keep going,
everyone,
Chad.
I was going to say, and everyone, you're going to hear us talk about mindset time and time again. It is not a one episode topic. It is a lifestyle. It is a belief. It is a lifestyle. So why don't we take this and pivot into some meat and potatoes about the IBC concept? And so David, I mean, you're the expert. I've read some books. I don't fully understand it. I want to employ it. So maybe we can kind of, go into what do I need to know if I'm like looking at this, like, what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to accomplish? What's the why? Let's get into some meat and potatoes here.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I never really describe myself as an expert. I constantly think of myself as a continuous learner. I wake up and think about this. I go to bed and I think about this, and I've been doing it for the last several years. So that's the experience I speak from. And I think it's become an obsession that's really powerful. So I'm happy to share with you. So I think a couple of very fundamental ideas we can start with is the principles that are found. I think one of the books that perhaps you've seen is Becoming Your Own Banker by Mr. Nelson Nash. He's the seminal work pretty much from which we derive the principles from the infinite banking concept. And I think they're very foundational pieces for people to start shifting and understanding their thinking. If you don't understand this part, it's very easy to go into rabbit holes that have nothing to do with what we were trying to accomplish. So the first idea I would share with the audience is the fact that everything you buy, you finance. When you purchase something, you're doing financing. And that is a very counterintuitive, profound idea that most people dismiss in part. So what do I mean by that? Usually when we think about financing purchases, whether it's an asset or a liability, whether it's a new car or an investment property, regardless, you're either thinking about two ways of financing traditionally. You're going to use credit, which means I have not gone through the accumulation process of capital. So I'm going to use somebody else's money, and in exchange, I am willing to pay them interest with future income for the ability to use their money. Most of us are aware of that. A lot of people in our society have been taught that using credit is bad. Therefore, they try to avoid it because they think about it as debt that puts pressure on them. So that leads us to the second point, which is the use of cash. And this one is the one that's very, very tricky. Most people think I rather pay with cash because I went through the process of accumulation of capital, and I rather use that than have to pay somebody interest. And the part that's missed here, that is the core of some of the problems that we're trying to address with IBC, is that when you give up your cash, you're giving up the opportunity to earn interest. So it goes both ways. Both paths are the same coin and opposite sides. And the problem with today's average American is that they think that those are two only options, whether I pay cash or credit. And I would argue, along with my partners at Factum Financial, with the community of infinite banking concept, that there's more efficient, better ways to do the process of financing your needs, because everything you purchase, you finance. And this will be the process of becoming a banker. Not only having the consumer hat of needing money to finance purchases through either of these methods, but also becoming the supplier, the financier, the banker. So how do banks do that? You alluded to this earlier, Chad. Banks take deposits or reserves at the federal or the central banks, and they will take money and put it to work, put energy into money, put it in motion. They'll issue a mortgage at 3%. When payments come back, they will loan it at 5% for a personal loan on a vehicle. When payments come back, they will issue an 8% loan for a remodel in a home. When payments come back, they'll issue a credit card of 15%. And the difference between all these loans that they're issuing in payments, interest, and the payment that they're paying in their deposits, which is usually zero, right? But if it's not, let's say it's something, that difference compounded, it's the returns that the bank sees on the ability to use capital that is not theirs and creating arbitrage.
Which is a really fascinating concept. So I want to pause there for a second.
Yeah.
Chad had talked about that with the fractional reserve lending.
Yeah.
But imagine
this is just straight banking using deposits. This is traditional banking. That doesn't even include how they can leverage that through fractional banking, by the way. So it's even worse than that.
So fair. So that's just for one, regardless of fractional that you were talking about. That just says for every dollar that they've got, it goes out. They get payments from that. Now they take that and immediately put it out. And that's like saying, I'm trying to give a concrete example, is if you were that person, now all of a sudden you're starting to, all the money that you come in, you're putting every single dollar to work. And every time that revenue comes back from that money making money, you just keep compounding over and over again. So now all of a sudden 1 turns 5, 10, 15, 20, hundreds of thousands. and it just keeps multiplying.
Let's
right?
put numbers to that real quick, right? So the simple way to put a number to that, the common thought is if the bank is making a loan at 4% to you, they're making 4% on that loan, right? Well, let's say that they're making a 4% loan to you, but they're using everyone's deposits in your community that they're paying 1% or 0.1%, 0.1, a tenth of a
So
percent.
so on $100, let's make the math easy. On $100, that's $4 that they're getting back, which is the 4%.
Right, right. But they're not using their money to make that loan. They're using money that the three of us and all of our friends and family put into that bank, right? And they're only paying us a tenth of a percent. So take 4%, divide it by 0.1%. That's a 40x return, okay, on that money. Now, and we'll leave fractional reserve banking here because this is a whole concept for another time, right? But just know that fractional reserve banking means for every dollar you give the bank, they can lend out $10. So now multiply that 40x return by 10. The bank can make a 400x return by lending you back your own money. Okay. That's what you got to figure out how to squash, because that there's no amount of savings you can put back to overcome that hurdle, right? This is why this stuff is important.
Yeah. And thanks for obviously putting numbers to this, both of you, brilliant minds. So it's really helpful to put that in context. Just a quick comment out of geeking out on this. The whole system is also built on a second layer of leverage, which is the central banking money in reserves that allows the banks to leverage. So we're talking about multiple layers of this, which makes it really scary to think that when I ask clients, where does your money reside? Where's your wealth reside? What's the warehouse of your money? It's a question that makes people feel like lost. Like, well, I have a 401k, but they don't have a straight answer for understanding where the money is. They don't understand that, for example, they're unsecured creditors of a bank when they deposit money in a checking account. What does that mean? What is a bail-in? What are all these risks in society today? They don't understand that. And I think creating that awareness is really important. But besides this, I bring this up as a process to illustrate how money has the ability to create other money when we understand how it works and when we understand how to use it. And the invitation then is to contrast that to the average American behavior. So I think Chad has heard me talk about this this week. But when we think broadly about an average person, in general, we have several categories of spending from their after-tax dollar: transportation, housing, living expenses, and then whatever's left, they put in savings. And most of these people are trying to maximize their return investment on that 2, 3, 5% they save, but they never look back at the 90+% of money that they're receiving and sending to somebody else's system. Call it a bank, call it a brokerage account, whatever it is that you want to call it. The invitation from the IBC concept perspective is to think about the possibility that you yourself can go, if you're willing, through a capitalization process, accumulating capital, so you can be the financier for your needs in your life. That 90% of that budget can be recaptured, so you stop sending that interest payment to other people's entities and you use it as a headwind, as a tailwind, not a headwind. And that's where this conversation starts to layer down. Believing that that is possible for you to, instead of constantly rely on the external financing of others, and instead you taking ownership with patience. It's a long-term process. It's it's available for anybody. The most important ingredient is engagement, wanting to really take over. And there's a part of the population that doesn't want to, and it's fine. But eventually, when they recognize the problem in front of them, like we were just alluding, banks, institutions in general are just profiting through their productivity. It usually motivates people to take a step back and think about how this can apply to them.
And I think that's why it's so important to understand what your why is, right? Again, it goes back to the mindset piece of these are all great tactics. To your point, it takes time in order to kind of build. Chad's talked before, it takes time to build. It's if you don't have a strong why, if you don't know what you're running towards, right, then you don't know that you're going to lose steam. You're going to lose motivation in running towards it, because all these are great concepts. There's people that have gained financial freedom using every single one of these concepts in every episode that we've talked about. But the differentiator is what is it? What switch needs to be activated in you to take a different approach?
Absolutely.
And that could be looking at it as the bank systems are making mad profits. And you say, they're making mad profits really off of the work that I'm doing. So can I just maybe take some of those profits? By the way, they're not going to care, right? If I go and I start doing all this again, when you think from a growth versus a fixed mindset, if you grab $20 million out of the financial system today, no one would even bat an eye. No one would even know, right? You'd be an overnight success and all of a sudden you'd have money. No one's going to know that money's gone. So it's looking around and maybe asking different questions. What is it that would get me motivated to do something different? Or maybe you're listening to this all as, because David and Chad and I are all just very exciting people to listen to. But chances are there's something in you.
Maybe
it's
David
a little
and I
deeper.
don't know about you, but
What's that?
I said maybe David and I don't know about you, but
That's true. I'm just the fly on the wall. That's fine. I'll buy that. So but what is it that's going to take you to the next level? Why is it that you want to go there? Because there is something, and without even talking to you guys, I know deep down inside that there is some vision that you have for yourself. Maybe it's traveling more with your kids. Maybe it's spending more time with your kids because maybe your parents didn't spend that much time with you. Maybe it's because you see people of influence around starting companies and how fun that they're enjoying it. Maybe it's watching Bill Gates in starting a lot of these charity groups, and you're sitting there going, I can do more than just what I'm doing. There is something deep down inside of you, but it's getting that self-awareness that will then lead you to, maybe it's infinite banking, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's that. So question those selves. So that way you can then take that next step for starting to challenge and say, maybe I need to reestablish what I need to go do.
Yeah, something we talk a lot about is the quality of the questions you ask yourself, because to your point, you want to do all these things, whatever they look like for you. But most people immediately go to the statements. I don't think I can do this. I can afford it. And the quality of the question you can ask yourself, such as, how can I become, how can I do, how can I achieve? It opens the mind for the creative power that we all have. It has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with your background. We all have been gifted this for free, to use our minds to put what's in the screen of our minds into the circumstances we live in today. And I think it starts with that quality questions, quality thinking. And I'll share this with you. Part of the reason why I share this so passionately, and it's become something very aligned with my purpose, is not just because it enables me to ask those questions myself and perhaps align myself with the things I want, but I truly believe that generationally in the future, the more we all start thinking more accurately, the more we all take responsibility, ownership for our financial life, as a society, we can change a lot of the things that are expressing themselves as social disruptions, divisions in society, wealth inequality. All these things are the product of a system that has unfortunately taken people down a road that creates the tension we see on society. And I think that little part of that could be a solution where we all look at ourselves in the mirror and say, if I take responsibility, I'll be one less person outside of that problem. And instead, I'm going to start thinking about how do I contribute to improve the situation. So
100%. Very, very, very well said. So take us into that framework. So you started talking about the bank piece of it, and then you said, okay, now imagine that you can take and start to apply that to yourself. Now what's the next step?
Okay, so now that we've briefly discussed that problem, we're given interest or we are not building assets through our capital that can grow, we need to start thinking about, if I want to use that process based on the understanding of the problem on myself, how do I apply that process in my life? What platforms, what products do I use to deploy my capital? Again, this is regardless of whether you're buying a silly doodad or if you're buying assets and you're an investor and you're a very sophisticated individual, right? I've seen real estate investors worth millions of dollars that when they see this concept, they say, wow, I wish I would have financed a lot of my acquisitions through this process. And to answer your question, then we started looking at the product, and which built this process, which is dividend paying whole life insurance policies. We use mutual companies that as a purpose have to use risk pooling. They're going to bring a group of people. We all have the certainty we all going to die. We have ways to measure the probabilities and the risk associated with that distribution over time. And we're all going to combine that risk, and we're going to transfer risk to an entity that as policyholders, we're all shareholders to, and we're going to protect each other. This idea, by the way, is 200 years old plus, right? Before the IRS, before tax considerations, before the Fed. It was a marketplace, free marketplace solution that emerged from the recognition of early mortality being a risk for households. And we're going to protect each other. Unfortunately, most people have heard poor messaging, incorrect messaging about this product, and they have their own ideas, their own beliefs, which usually leads them to disregard it as an asset class. Last week, we had the opportunity with our group to have a training session with Tom Wheelwright, the tax advisor for the Rich Dad Company. And in the call, I took a note when he was referring to the types of insurance. And the way he described it was term insurance is an expense, whole life insurance is an asset class. And I thought that was really profound. If you think about the standard financial statement, you'll have an income and expenses, which will be your cash flow equation. And then at the bottom, you'll have your assets and liabilities, which will be your balance sheet. And the way I think about this is I want to flow my income through assets before I decide what to do with it, whether I recapture liabilities, whether I pay expenses, whether I buy other assets. I want to make sure I'm buying assets. And because whole life insurance policies that are dividend paid, usually with mutual companies, are assets, they give me the ability to do two things. I'm going to protect my family against my loss. My best asset in my life forever will be myself and my productivity. So I want that protection. And number two, I am going to start thinking about how to finance my life today. And this is a realization that Mr. Nelson proposes in his book. Every individual today has a higher need for financing than for protection. In other words, your probability of needing protection right now, although it's very, very risky if you were to be lost, is much lower than your need for financing. It's more likely that you're going to need to travel to pay needs for your household, for your children. And therefore, we should prioritize both things. Most people buy whole life insurance for protection. I would suggest that you need to look at it in an asset class where properly structured, you can use this as a vehicle to finance your life today. And that is when this starts separating from the traditional paradigm. Most people look at savings for retirement, which is in its own an idea that most of us maybe don't subscribe. But if you do, you want to go in a process of accumulation and then in distribution, and you hope and pray that you never run out of money. That's what most people are doing with a 401k, with some of, right? The number one fear in boomers, running out of money before they die. What a crazy way to live. You wanna outlive your money. That's not living, that's surviving through after your productivity and not enjoying life fully. I am very blessed, very lucky that I was introduced to this idea because it shifted and aligned with who I already was, which is I want to live life today. My mom died when she was 44 years old, okay? She was perfectly normal, healthy at 40. At 44, she passed away from ovarian cancer. We never thought this would happen, you know? And I'm not saying, again, just the protection aspect, but I know that because of that experience, I am already biased to, I want to live life today. I want to maximize this conversation. I'm here with the two of you, nowhere else in the world. My mind, me is here. And that's how I should look at money, perhaps, of maximizing my life today and also planning to grow my assets for future and future opportunity, because it's a mindset of abundance as well. Okay. So with that in mind, the product is perfect because it allows you to create an asset. When you are putting premiums as deposits into these products, you are accumulating cash values, which is the current, think about it, equity inside the product. It's a much more formal definition, discounted value. So the future death benefit minus future premiums, blah, blah, blah. But think about it as the current equity inside the asset that continues to grow guaranteed It has guarantee clauses, so it's never going to come down, which makes it a very, very important product for the foundation of your wealth. It has the opportunity to earn interest. So when I put cash there, it's going to grow every year. Every time I go to bed, I wake up richer. Every time I go to bed, I wake up richer, and I did nothing. My money's working for me. On top of that, because of the structure of these mutual companies, I am also a shareholder of the company, which enables me to earn equity in the form of dividends, which are paid as returns and premiums. So not only I earn interest, I also earn dividends on that money, which is a beautiful thing. I every year I become richer because of the participation in this arrangement. And then more importantly now, my money is having a second role, which doesn't happen when you use either credit or cash. In addition to having an asset that is compounding uninterruptedly, I have the ability to use that cash value as collateral. Because I have an asset, can look at the insurance company and say, from your reserve cash, may I borrow cash in the amount of up to the amount that I've contributed in premiums, or that I have in cash values, I'm sorry. So I can make a loan from you and go finance the needs around me today, while my money sits and compounds uninterruptedly for the rest of my life. That is a principle that allows you to put money to work and multiply its jobs, growth and financing today's needs. Okay, regardless of rates of return, growth, the interest of the policy, how much the dividends, most people go into those rabbit holes, and that's the question. Say, how much is compared to the 401? Oh, but I'm earning this. Take a step back and think about that. I don't know if either of you have ever had to take a loan for one of your assets outside 401k, but as soon as you take that money out, the growth stops, right? There's no, unless you put that money back, the process starts. And also the most important thing, you had the opportunity cost was to take that money out, the time that you lost on that compounding.
That's right.
So if you have the opportunity to, through your life and your productivity, your current health, who you are, create an asset today that you're going to build over time, that whenever you die is going to enable you to protect your family, that grows both through interest growth and dividend growth, equity and interest, and that allows you to collateralize it so you can finance today's needs. Why not to take a step back and think about that?
That's hugely powerful, because what you said there, and I want to make sure people don't gloss over this. If you go take a loan from your 401k or another asset, you are physically pulling money out of it. You are literally dropping the balance, and therefore the balance you have in that account is what's earning interest. So you, like he said, you have lost opportunity cost on that money. Yeah. The beauty of these products is you're not taking anything out of your policy. Your policy stays exactly how it is, but you collateralize it. You say, hey, Mr. Bank or Mr. Insurance Company, I have this much value here. Give me a loan secured by this. And they're like, sure, all day long. Because here's the deal. You're going to die one day, and that policy they'll simply pay themselves back if you don't pay that loan back the day you die. They're in the long game, baby. 250 years and running, right? So absolutely. What an amazing thing, David. What an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. And I'll add one more point to add a little more validity to it. So this is me telling you this concept. Now let's take a look at it and bring it back to the real world. Where is this happening at large scales? So you don't have to look at my policies and little David Zapata doing this. When you look at largest corporations in the United States, usually banks are at the top of that list. Some of the largest national banks are the largest owners of a product called bank-owned life insurance, BOLI. Okay, this product happens to be a product that they purchase with cash reserves or deposits or whatever assets, and they are able, based on public policy, I'm talking about central bank regulation, they're able to use the cash values in those policies. They're able to represent those as tier one capital, which is the capital that they use to compare to risky assets for their supplementary reserve ratios, meaning how safe, how structured the bank is, not only accounts for deposits and reserves at the central bank, but their cash values are part of that sacred money with gold. So if banks, who are very good, we already established that, at using money to create large profits, are putting their profits into these vehicles, they're warehousing their savings into these vehicles, they're no dumbest. They're really smart. They're really intelligent.
Which goes to in anything, right? This is true whether it's business, whether it's your personal. Follow where the money goes, even all the way
examples
up to the
of
top.
success.
Because if your goal is where money is, follow where other people's money is, right? And that's brilliant that you share that, because most time people assume, I think Chad and I covered this in one of the episodes, valuation and what people are worth and where their money is actually at. Most people assume, well, they probably have X amount in say, if they're worth $100 million, they don't have $100 million just sitting in the savings account. They don't just have it sitting in a 401k.
No.
They have
That
it
would be
sitting
the worst
in
place for them to
somewhere
have
else.
it sitting.
Well, they have it sitting somewhere
Yeah.
else, right? And even if you don't even believe that, just think, where do you think, Jeff Bezos' money is? A lot of it, sure, is in a company and the valuation of it.
Yeah.
But he, there's some amount that he has on his own personal balance sheet. Where do you think that money is? Think through where those are. In exactly what David said, the banks, right, is another great example of a system, an entity that is very good with money. So where are they putting their assets? Where are they putting their money? Where are they putting their savings? There's a lot to be learned from that. Success leaves clues, but you have to have the awareness to find the clues. So,
I'll take it one step further to get right on top of closer to where we are, right? Banks are so far removed and businesses are so far removed from the individual. Think about the executives of your company, right? I read a study recently, and David, you can probably quote this, but I read a study recently where if you look at the compensation packages of CEOs from General Electric, from Airbus, from IBM, these massive companies, right? This is a person now. We're not talking about a bank. We're talking about a person. They don't get 401k plans. They get like maybe 2% of their compensation package is a 401k plan. Most of it is going into products like this whole life whole life insurance policy. Whether they're using it this way, I can't speak to that, but that's something to be said if that's how they're choosing to receive their compensation packages.
Add to that list politicians, athletes, people that are close to advisors and family offices and institutions that understand how money works, because they're taking examples from successful entities and applying it at the you and me level. So to go back to something you said at the beginning of the call, who this applies to, I go back to some very, very basic thought. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what you do. All those things are the external results of your previous thinking. What's in the screen of your mind is the future you, and that's up to you. The person that's engaged, that wants to take control, that wants to seek prosperity and abundance, is able to do this starting with a very small policy or very large assets, does not matter. It matters that you want to question, what are you doing today? Is your income going directly through expenses to somebody else and never seeing you again? Or are you thinking like the rich that want to acquire assets that create cash flow, that create additional equity so they can continue to grow their net worth, so they can do more prosperity for themselves, their family, and then to free themselves to think about how they can contribute their gifts to make the world better. That mindset shift differentiates who wants to come on board and who doesn't.
It's very well profoundly said.
I think we're going to let him have the mic drop moment today.
I think that's our mic drop moment. Chad usually throws out some. I think he's got like a cheater list
always
hiding on his computer where he just like throws down the mic. So 100% exactly what you just said, David. And I think that's a great pause, because what I want everyone that's listening is to take a moment and answer those questions. Is that going to be you? And it's okay if the answer is, it is me, but maybe not right now. It could be that that's not for you, and that's okay too. But just ask the question and answer it. Where is it that you want to go? Are you willing to look and become an expert into something that is a little different, is not what the mainstream is? And if you're worried about conversations, don't worry. We got an episode on that. How do you have the conversations with the friends and family that are going to tell you you're crazy, you're stupid? That's not how I built wealth. Sure, but exactly what David had said. The number one fear right now in boomers is, I pray that I've got enough money in the bank that is going to outlast me. Think of how very troubling that is. Let's put our empathetic hats on for a second, and then we'll close the session down.
You know what? I mean, what other people think about what you're doing is none of your business. Leave it that way.
Well, it's 100% true. You got to be able to have enough self-confidence enough to be able to say that. So Chad's coming from a place where he's got enough of that confidence to be able to say it. For the people who don't have it, don't worry, we got that episode that we had done. But imagine the boomer situation. They bought into a system that said, don't worry, we're going to have pensions. We're going to have, you work for 30, 40 years, saving your 401k, et cetera. They build a mass. Now all of a sudden they're retired. They're supposed to live. They've saved their entire lives. They've pushed out and said, I'm going to live meagerly so I can have someday where I can live abundantly. Now they go through their whole lives and they have this fear of, I pray that I've got enough money, because right now we're living a lot longer. That's another thing that was never factored into it. If you projected that you died at age 80 and you die at 79 or 80, then perfect. You spent your last cent before you died. If you lived at 85, you're screwed. You're hosed. 86, 87, 90. What a very scary place to be in. That you've lived your entire life from a scarcity standpoint so that you could save it, so that one day you could actually enjoy life. You get to the point of being able to enjoy life. And now your fear is not, am I saving enough? It's, I've stopped working. Now I have to still stay in that saving mode because I don't want to run out of money. And I'm one mark of correction away from having to go back to work in my 70s. A very, very scary point. So that's not what we want for you. That's not what we're planning on doing. So that's why we're pulling this stuff together and trying to help educate you, get you to challenge whatever belief structure that you have, if you're open to it, and allow you to have the tools and the resources available to you to make that happen. So we'll close today's sessions. If you have questions for either David, Chad, or myself, just go ahead and reach out to us on social media, send me an email, whatever that you need to go do. Contact us with your questions, because your questions can get answered immediately. And that may be the thing. You're just one question away from having a completely different life.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure. I can't wait to do it again. You two are inspiration, and I have so much respect for both of you. I am honored to be here with you.
Honored to have you, sir. And honestly,
the respect
guys,
goes both ways.
Yes, it does. To pre-frame the next episode, I am someone who's getting ready to buy some of this stuff. I've been learning about this for a while. I have questions. It might be good to have a live Q&A and just, help me walk through it, because I'm sure if I'm asking these questions, some other people are as well.
Glad to hear, man. Any way I can serve, be happy to share.
Excellent. All right, guys. Take
See
care.
you soon.
And until next time, keep moving forward, guys.